I'm going to remind everyone to please turn off their cell phones, as well as the emergency exits, are located at the side and at the back. Ms. Kadetsky, if you would please call the roll.
Ms. Josie Bonhoy.
Here.
Ms. Pat Bradford.
I am here.
Ms. Stephanie Crable.
Here.
And now we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That brings us to the approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda? I make a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second? Second. Discussion, committee members? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I would like to make a suggestion that we not vote on 2310, 2320, and 2335 until such time as we can review them all, because they're very interrelated. So if we could, I don't know how we want to do that, discuss them in that order, but refrain from taking a vote to pass until we have a chance to see how they interconnect.
You're saying 2310, 2320, and 2330?
Yeah, B, C, D, because they're all related. So I don't know how, if that is what the agenda, I don't know, that's not how we normally do it. That's why I'm okay with the agenda as it is, but I just wanted to
note of rather keep those in committee if there's changes to the suggested
Well, I don't even think keep them in committee if we need to, but not to vote on them at the end of the discussion, so that we can discuss 2310 and then discuss 2330 and then discuss 2335 and then vote on them all, because they're very interrelated and there's a lot of words that are.
I appreciate your feedback. When designing the agenda, that was the intent for today. So yes, that will be, as we move forward with that, we're going to be discussing B, C, and D, because the whole purpose is to have some consistent language changes, and then based on what the committee decides, we can vote after the three of them. But I hear what you're saying, and I agree with that. Ms. Bradford, any other discussion for the agenda? Okay, there's a first and a second on the table to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes 3-0. Okay. And now we'll go to the approval of the minutes. I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Madam Chair, I'd like some discussion.
I'd like to get a second first before discussion.
Second.
Okay, now discussion. Yes, Ms. Bradford.
I had given two things to Ms. Kadetsky, reflecting what happened on page 2, and that's now on it's up there. Page 2 and page 3, just added, just that we discussed this, so that it would more, if someone was looking through the meetings, they would be able to go back and find that in what they were doing. See if I can pull that up.
While she's looking at that, I have something to add. So when you get yours, Ms. Bradford, then just jump right in. On page 2, under section 3, approval of the minutes, it says October 17th, and I think that's supposed to be November the 21st, right?
Where?
Section 3, approval of the minutes.
Well, in this recap, it would be approved. It was the November meeting. So we're approving the October meeting minutes in that recap?
Yes, but if you look around what's down at the bottom, it says we're talking about 4,300 and 7205. And that's where we spent a good portion of our meeting on the 21st.
I agree, but it was also a portion of the meeting on the 17th as well. So I don't believe that, Ms. Kadetsky, if you don't mind looking into that and double checking, but I do believe that was, okay. I do believe it is correct.
So, well, let me ask a point of clarity. I thought we were reviewing the minutes from the November 21st meeting. we review those in the December meeting, right? And we are in the December meeting. So this is, and it says right up here on the top that that the 11/21 committee meetings. And that's what it says on the agenda that we just approved, that we're reviewing the minutes from November the 21st. So,
Right, so in November's meeting, we would have reviewed October meeting minutes. Does that make sense?
Because we couldn't review November's minutes in November because we were
These are
doing it.
we are in our December, we are in our December meeting now, so we're reviewing November minutes. So when you're looking back at the November minutes, which is what we have before us, we would have been reviewing the October minutes.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
We didn't work out getting those changes made prior to the meeting. So if you will look at number 2, approval of the agenda, come down 5 lines. The end of the sentence, it says updates to be completed. I just wanted to add, after discussion, you took a vote because we held discussion on it. After discussion. Right in front of the word Ms. for Ms. Barnhart, next to the last, 3 lines up. I think it's important to note that we did discuss that issue then.
Okay, I have no problem with that add of Ms. Barnhart adds discussion, then takes a vote.
me neither.
Okay, and then flip forward to page 12 under C. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down between may have and during, I'm wrong. During the discussion, no, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 lines down, far left, discussion, then Ms. Barnhart made a motion. Same thing. I just want to add, after lengthy discussion on the Constitution, because we did discuss the Constitution at length. And if someone's looking through the minutes to find that discussion, I want them to be able to find it. So
I'm kind of confused. You're going to have to walk me through that again, because you know what I did? I reviewed for the November 21st.
7205, count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. See the discussion on the far left?
Uh-huh.
Okay, after lengthy discussion on the Constitution, period, new sentence, Ms. Barnhart made a motion to keep this with the policy committee, and with Ms. Crable seconding, it was all in favor, the vote was 3-0.
I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with that change here. The discussion was on the whole section of Z primarily in 7205. And so it says during the discussion, it talks about after a lengthy discussion. So I think it's already captured here in the minutes. Ms. Crable, do you have anything to add with that
I
section?
agree with you.
Okay. Any other additions after that, Ms. Bradford?
No, thank you.
Anything else for you, Ms. Crable?
Well, I guess not, because what I did was I read these minutes and then went back and rewatched the wrong committee meeting. But, yeah, but one question that I did have, that when we put in here I don't know what these time limits are in parentheses, and I don't want to include time if we did not adhere to those times. And that was my whole thing, is that we didn't adhere to our times in the last meeting at all. But I don't think that, I wasn't clear if these times were the suggested times from the agenda or the time that we actually talked about the items. And that to me is important to capture.
Are you talking about the times?
The times listed on it was the times listed on the agenda.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and so is it important to us to note if we followed those times or not? I mean, it's important to me to note that, because I get called for talking and getting point of ordered. So I would like to see if we're going to include the times, I would like to see the actual times.
I don't think the times are necessary, so I would be fine with removing those times. And so I would make a motion to pass these meeting minutes, inserting the words after discussion in the first paragraph. It says Ms. Barnhart, after discussion, takes a vote on a motion to amend the agenda, and then removing the times that are behind the policies. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion with those? All in favor to adopt the amended meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That is going to pass 3-0. That brings us to the main focus today, which is the parental involvement policy, 1310-4002. As you can see, committee members, I have listed for 30 minutes. So what the idea is first is to go through and allow us to ask any questions, clarity, insight that we'd like to see in this policy, approximately 10 minutes. And then the next 20 minutes, the staff will be able to walk through what we're going to launch in response to some of the general statutes that are rolling out from the Parents' Bill of Rights. And it'll be active January 1, is my understanding. So with that, I will open the floor to, So what you see before you is yellow highlighted. And so in order for us to not have a specially called meeting, after this, we went ahead and approved the parental involvement policy. And what you see highlighted are those changes that we adopted in the regular December board meeting. I did have one question, and I believe it's directed at Ms. Barnum. If you go back to, it's the insertion of all of the list of involvement. It's under section G.
Page 30 or 13 of 15, depending on where you were looking. 30 in our packet.
So it's 30 in our packet, page 13 of the policy, under section G. If you look at that second paragraph, it says the general statute requires that the board policy provide links to parents for community services. Insert here a list of applicable links. So that will need to be added. And so are you prepared to do that?
Yes, that will need to be an addition. We have the link ready to go. We'll just need to insert it in because we have it in two different places, and we'll show you today where it is.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
That was the same location to add an I and put in the right to review professional development training materials. That was the exact same spot, just right underneath it.
Would you like to lead that discussion?
I don't see where you are.
She's asking to insert a letter I on that same page, page 13.
Which we haven't seen.
This is in our material, is it not?
What's the title?
Under the talking points, I had to discuss additional language regarding the right to review instructional materials and related documents. And so that was what I put down for the main discussion points. And I'm happy for you to speak to that, Ms. Bradford.
Okay, I don't know that it's in the piece, so let me give it and let's get copies. Just because I can't find it on my computer.
Is that policy 3210 that she's talking about?
No, it's not an existing policy. It's to add into that the right to review professional development training materials. Parents shall have the right to access upon request all district training materials used for professional development. Training materials means content or resources provided to the administrator, educator, or other district staff member, regardless of its format, including printed or representational materials, audiovisual materials, and materials in electronic or digital format, such as materials accessible through the internet. Training materials also include information received via assessments and evaluations, and any service hired or contracted with for use by the district, including being in outside presentations or consultants. School board members shall also have the right to accept upon request district training materials used for professional development. The superintendent shall provide reasonable notification to parents and students of all their rights to review professional development and training materials. Requests shall be granted in compliance with applicable public records laws.
Madam Chair, I respectfully ask that we leave that off until later. It's not required by the law, and that is a lot of information for all of us. I'm looking at some blank faces at the table to my left, and looking at my own blank face if I had a mirror. That's a lot of information to add when it's not required by the law at this point. So I would respectfully ask that we table that or postpone that discussion until January, because that's not required.
Yeah, I thought it had been added.
Can you
and I
give
thought
them
the
copies of
attachment
this,
was
too?
on here. So I obviously misunderstood somewhere.
My apologies about that, Ms. Bradford. I had put it as the talking points. I didn't That might have been just an oversight, my seeing an attachment. I apologize about that. And so thank you for having this printed. When I jotted some notes when you were saying it auditorily, a couple questions came to mind was, one, would it follow the same guidelines as the response time for other parent requests? It says within 10 business days, no later than 20 business days up here. So I would want something that I'd like for us to consider if we want to consider adding this into it would be to talk about the timeline.
Had a time limit, a timeline?
Well, the timeline request, so it lays out what, just the
Okay.
expectation. And then the other question, let me reread this again really quick.
If you, while you're reading, Ms. Barnard, in your description, Ms. Bradford would like to discuss adding language regarding the right to review instructional materials and related documents to supplement current policies 3200 and 3210. So this is outside that boundary. I mean, that's what you wrote, but this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about professional development that Dr. Barnes and his team coordinate, and any one of our assistant superintendents provide professional development for the folks in their departments as well. So this is, what she's presenting to us is outside the scope of what you even put on our agenda. So I would like to make a motion to postpone this discussion until the January policy meeting.
With this written, you're saying with this written language in?
If we want to add this as letter I, then I think that we should postpone adding this as letter I until everybody has a chance to read it and digest it. And I don't know what C5 USC, we don't even know what that legal thing is. So perhaps Mr. Vogel, who probably wrote this, should, weigh in on what the heck that even is.
I have, this policy has already been adopted, so I have no problem saying we can hold this policy in committee with this language as inserted into the actual document itself and discussing through the details.
So we have to have the policy, sorry.
Yeah.
We have to have a policy release. So how does that work? If we hold it, are we just holding this verbiage?
I'm only
Because
asking to hold letter I.
Okay,
I know we
right.
have to have this done. We've already approved it.
Right.
Everything's in yellow. We're going to ask questions. Letter I was a huge insert.
Oh, yeah.
And I would like for that to be, that part, we'll bring this back to the policy in January and discuss it again.
So I'm not refuting
Okay,
what you're
okay.
saying. I'm
I just wanted to be
saying,
clear.
Are we okay legally, because we've already passed this, we passed this last week, so we're good to hold the whole thing?
I think so, yeah.
And this is just for discussion here today, right?
So
It's the video.
No. So when you hold a policy, that means, and my understanding is that it's not enacted, it's not active, but the policy needs to be, this portion, I think, because this is I have a lot of questions about
Yeah,
this.
this is huge.
But I think we have
Maybe-
to have a policy under 1310.
Right, so what I can, if I can offer an amendment to your motion, Ms. Crable, is to say to bring this back to policy to further discuss.
I thought that's what I said. Postpone discussion on letter I until January. Okay.
Bring I back.
We'll bring the whole policy back,
I will make a note to bring this
and we're going
back.
to
And so,
discuss I specifically.
thank you, committee members, for that. So we have this all, the language documentation now, so we can look that over to see more depth details. Other questions about the highlighted yellow part?
Yeah, I have a couple questions about that.
Yes.
The, and maybe you're going to, and if you're going to discuss this as we move forward, then just say, move on, and I'll get it. So in letter, it's on page 1, and it is 1 of 15. The second paragraph, when it says students, parents under this policy we're only talking about students who are 18 years or young, under 18. So do we have to put in any other words about our students who are over 18? That their parents are not allowed or entitled to this, or are we going to say, any parents are allowed? I asked NCSBA about it, and, the answer was to, talk to your legal counsel, and you can put in there, you can address it however you want. So I just wanted to because we've been making little tweaks here and there on ages and when you get your diploma, and I just wanted for us to be clear on that. And they said it was kind of vague. It was up to our school board to decide that.
So, I can just answer for our general practices. For a student that reaches age of majority, that reaches 18, they are then able to make most decisions for themselves.
Right.
But that doesn't mean, in general, that we don't still provide access to the parent for student records. The parent may not be able to make some of the educational decisions for the student, such as under IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The parent still has access to the records, but the student, unless the parent sought guardianship for them at age of majority, if that student is a full adult and does not have guardianship over them, then that student makes their own decisions, but the parent can still have access to the records as long as the parent claims the child as a dependent. And I think the way that is identified is through tax purposes.
So we're good? Okay. All right.
Yes, we're good.
Can I just keep going? Okay, so this is page 20, page 3 of 15. Just wanted to point out that, and maybe this is because of all the changes, but it looks like we have letter B and letter C are, the parental notification is labeled as B in red and C in black with a highlight. So we need to just, clean that up. It's on page 3 of 15 of the policy. No, I'm sorry, 4 of 15. Okay. 4 of 15, sorry.
Yeah, there's some.
It should be B, is what you're saying?
I think it's supposed to be,
'Cause it's
I'm not certain because there's been so many changes on this. I think it's supposed to be, well,
B.
look on page 2 of 15, where it has A and B are both crossed out.
Somebody remind me, who created this yellow?
That was the passing with the changes recommended by NCSBA. Our staff had looked at it and had approved it. And so rather than seeing them in red and thinking that we have not adopted the policy, I kept it in black, but I wanted us to be able to denote what we adopted because we didn't have a full depth and study. So the yellow were changes that NCSBA and our central office staff agreed with when we, as the board, adopted that. So I agree with you, Ms. Crable, it should be a B in front of parent communication, participation in conferences.
Well, look on page 2. Yeah,
To clarify, A is on page 1, parental
Yes.
involvement plans.
Yes.
And so what you're looking at should be a C. So B is marked out, and it is a C for parental notification, and then it moves into Title I.
So what is parent communication? Oh, wait a minute. So A is parental involvement plans.
On page 1.
On page 1. And then B is
B
parent.
is parent communication, participation in conferences.
Okay, but that's marked out.
And then
On
C
both
is
of them.
parental notification.
Okay, so that's what I thought when I was trying to follow along. But if this is already adopted and we're about to put this in our policy manual, then there's some serious, stuff that we have to take care of. So then moving on down through that.
I did have a question, since we're on page 4, looking at big C number 2, when it talked about creating a parent guide for student achievement, do we have consistent report cards across the data of like what the standard of expectation, if you're in second grade, all second grade teachers will be evaluated on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Okay, just want to double check that.
So
Keep going, Ms.
also
Crable.
in that big C number 2, little a, parentheses 3, kind of right in the middle, where it's talking about, it's saying all the things that the guide will include. Number 3 says the child's progress toward achieving state and unit expectations, including the policies. Now, I understand including the policies, but does this mean that we have to do individualized so that each kid gets a handbook that talks about their student progress? If that is, that's really time prohibitive and cost prohibitive, I would think.
The interpretation from our meeting with DPI is basically what we're doing now. And when we do the report cards, we'll give it individual progress. We also do send home data from the end of the year for students' individual progress. Teachers also throughout the year do individual progress. So we feel comfortable what we're currently doing seems to match what is required.
Well, no, I'm not suggesting that we're not giving those progress reports, but if you're reading this exactly, it says, at a minimum, the guide will include the following. And it says that we will put the child's progress in this guide.
And
So
so-
this guide, is my understanding, we're getting at the beginning of the school year.
So DPI made it clear yesterday, we actually had a webinar yesterday with DPI, that the guide, first of all, we have written, the guide is for across the state on the web, or the website is adequate, does not have to be written. So that is the guide that we're providing. And along with that, the schools will be providing individual progress to their students. So that gives the parents that information. So the guide itself, and when you see it, we're going to walk you through it. It's going to have all of the different type of assessments that we have when they're offered, and then the school provides the parents with that information. Like, we give the parents the progress report of their students. We give them the EOC or the EOG results. So I think when we walk you through that, that'll answer the question.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so then let's move back up. I skipped one by accident. In letter B, parent communication, participation, and conferences, number 2, where it says parent participation at schools. So I had this question too, when we're talking about, I understand, the school improvement teams, the MTAC teams, selection of instructional materials, but when we're talking about the School Health Advisory Council, that is a part of 6140, and we're talking about the Business Advisory Council, 2670, those are not school-level committees, those are district-level committees. And what McKenna had said to me there was that we can pull those out, make it like a number, make it a separate number, and make it clear to our parents that every school does not have a SHAC, but they have a wellness committee, but it's not the same thing. And then the district has a business advisory council, the schools do not. But she said that, that the NCSBA was just trying to make sure parents knew of every way they could get involved. And I would like for us to see that as a separate line as district, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, and maybe even add in wording in that second line that talks about our advisory committees and our board committees, so that are on a district level that parents can be involved in, so they know that there's 2 different places that they can be involved, at a school level or at our district level, just so they're clear.
And again, on the website, totally agree with you. And the website is in progress, but we actually are breaking out for the parents the ways to get involved at the district level and the school level. So that would definitely be aligned with what you're saying.
Yeah, so I would like to see us make that when we come back to maybe look at this in January or do it right now, but maybe just do it in January so you have a chance to get the wording right, but to make it clear as part of our policy.
Madam
Well,
Chair?
and as I'm hearing you talk, Ms. Crable, I wonder if we just kind of took out the ads, because it sounds like from the policy, we're just trying to give examples of how to be involved. And since we have a website that goes through that, just to put that link in there so parents can see all of it. And then it's one space that Ms. Baggy would be updating versus us saying, okay, we're going to do it here, and then we forgot to do it in policy. Ms. Bradford?
Well, I hadn't thought of that, but what I thought of, if it was going to stay like this, I agree with Ms. Crable, but I think you need to bullet point those things if it's going to stay in print. It's just a mass of stuff to read, and a parent's not going to really, you have to read it about 4 times to follow what it's saying. So if it stays in print, bullet point it, but I like Ms. Barnhart's suggestion even better.
Okay, committee members, any other suggestions for that? And then we're going to turn it over so we can go through the website itself.
Can I just ask one more question, Jen? You're probably going to address this one for certain. It is on page 22, which is page 5 of 15 of the policy. It is little letter F.
F as in Frank?
F as in Frank. And I am fully aware and understand that this is coming straight from statute, and we have to, some of this we have no, say-so over. But do we have any latitude in where it says we have to list to the parents every other place they can go to school, and what, I know. So, no, that's what the law says. So I asked, NCSBA what their thoughts were on that, and she said the law is very vague, and you can include what you want in there. So I am just thinking, do we go through every charter school that's here in town, every Montessori school, every private school, every parochial school? I mean, that's a lot to put in there, so.
Yeah, so DPI has given us a standard language that we can include in there and then reference back to their resources so that we're not.
So DPI is advertising it,
Yes,
not us.
yes.
Okay, so we don't have to provide our list, like every school that's in,
That is not my understanding.
okay, all right, well, that's good. Because there's no need for us to have to tell everybody to go someplace else besides us.
And with that, committee members, I'm going to allow Dr. Faust, I don't know if Dr. Faison or Ms. Varnum is going to walk through. Okay, if we'll come to the podium and walk us through the website.
And while they're coming up, look at letter R, and this is just a typographical stuff. Number 3, and starting on page 7, we got the R, the ST, but then we have V.U, V.V, X.W. We've got a lot of little things we need to fix in there.
Okay.
Okay, so overall, just as a clarification to kind of put this back into global terms, legislation, the Parents' Bill of Rights, became law, right? So, and the main focus here is parental involvement and empowerment being fundamental to the successful education of all students. And to ensure that active engagement and timely provision of information. This is really legislation and policy around the timely provision of information. Then public school units have to, number one, inform parents of their rights. So they might not be new rights, but it might be that we put this in a certain place so that they are better informed of their rights and responsibilities regarding their child's education. Of course, providing that guide for student achievement. Dr. Faison's going to go into more depth about that, where parents know all about the entire educational program, but then the parts how their student is responding to that. And then the next one, to develop policies to effectively involve parents. And so that's where we are on this one. Much of what is required, though, please keep this in mind, what is required has already been done. This is just being shared differently and in a more collective way. So this collective guide puts it in one location. So a couple of things that are new that are really important, which is why policy kind of lays it out in this way, creates new rights for parents, direction of their child's education, care, upbringing, selection of qualifying schools, access and review to student records under FERPA. Some of those things are still, have always been in place, but there are a list of a few things that are new. Other pieces that are new are making sure that parents' legal rights are displayed for them to be better informed. So that's kind of what's going to set the stage for walking through this. You've mentioned several pieces through policy. I had a few things that I wanted to highlight for you. We know the Parents' Bill of Rights substantially revises this policy. 1310 was in existence, but a lot of it has been updated and refreshed based on aligning with not only the legislation, but the recently passed state board policy, which is Parent 02 or PRNT -02. One thing that really is helpful is when we go through the parental involvement plans, bringing together in one place the parents' information on Title I plans, school improvement plans, and involvement in the school plan for the management of student behavior. So pulling all those things together so parents aren't trying to figure out where they can be involved in formalized plans, but saying here are the 3 main formalized plans, and then it's much easier to be involved. The participation part, the section we were naming as B, parent communication, participation in conferences. Information has already been in place about parental involvement in student behavior issues and parental involvement in attendance, but it's about pulling that information together and putting it in the forefront for parents to understand the details. Again, effective communication about course of study, instructional materials, all of that is going to be displayed further in the guide. I appreciate that you you mentioned that some of this information is school-specific and some is district-specific. So we have ways that will show you the differentiation. Again, this is still a work in progress, but there are definitely school and district distinctions in this. This also really focuses on regular collaboration and communication between parents and school. The Guide for Student Achievement, of course, we have a minimum of what the guide needs to include. We have a plethora of information. And then we've also added a few other things in that we know are meaningful and important that sort of round out that whole body of information that helps parents make educational decisions. There are a few pieces in here where we'll reference some of the other work we're doing, like Parent and Caregiver Academy, because providing parent resources, parent training sessions, advocacy, literacy, parenting classes, advisory information, and then also DPI guides where those need to be included. The additional annual notifications that are all listed in here have always been completed in, a lot of them have been in the student handbook, and some have been on our operations website. We're pulling those all together, and some on finance website. We're pulling those all together to be in the same location. So the website's going to seem a lot when you start looking at it. The other pieces, the Policy 1310 identifies two different sections: opportunities to withhold consent or opt out, and then certain activities that require parental written consent. We have created two sections that are very, that are visually bring parents to the understanding of these are all the things that are happening, but you get to opt out of those, and this is your this is your option to be well informed. And these are all the things that can happen in schools, opportunities that can occur, but they won't occur without your written consent. So making sure we distinguish those, because there has often been confusion on, do I opt in, do I opt out, how do I know? And where can I find that all in one location? And then, let's see, there was one more thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned. The procedures for parental involvement in student health and some of the other pieces such as remedies for parental concerns related to student health, and then requests for, just general parent requests for information that all fall under 1310. Then Ms. Brinson is going to, after Dr. Faison walks through the website, Ms. Brinson is going to talk to you about our process for our being, instead of working harder, we're going to work smarter in the data collection and monitoring of those things. So if you have questions, let us know. But there's a whole lot more information, but I don't want to take up too much time since you guys have seemed to be well read on the policy. Is there anything I missed? I'll be ready. Yeah.
So, as Ms. Barnum said, this website has a lot of information, and DPI, and we've come up with about 90% of this is already there on the website. We're kind of all pulling it together. This is for parents to have that one-stop shop to go to. So I'm going to start by asking Mrs. Baggy to click on the Parent Guide to Student Achievement. I think it's important to note that this is a work in progress. We are like ahead of most of our districts. Yes, ma'am?
Walk us through how to get to where you're taking us.
You cannot get to it now because it is not live. So, but what I will say is one of the things that we will be doing before we get it live is we will be asking some of our employees who are already parents to test drive this, because and we want to ask people who maybe don't live in the classroom setting or really get that, and if you guys want to test drive it, please, because the biggest thing for this, as you're looking at this, is parent friendly. Is this something that our parents can easily understand? For example, one of the things you're going to see here are policy numbers. When we step back and looked at it, that doesn't make a lot of sense. 3,400 makes a lot of sense to us, but not to our parents. So we're going to go and actually put that language in the title of our different policies. But this is a draft. Like I said, we are fortunate. We've been working on this for a long time. DPI actually just gave us the template yesterday, because we're ahead of the game, but we're still not completely done.
And
So-
Dr. Faison, real quick, committee members, we've reached our time on this, so I'd like to make a motion to extend the time to allow this continue to be walked through 10 minutes. Here, first and second, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Continue. Thank you.
Okay. So the first button that you clicked on was the Parent-Student Guide to Achievement. So this is the guide that allows parents to go everywhere, go in and see everything, basically. And there are some other things on this web page that are not there, but a lot of things are crossed over. So what we did, you will see in here, there are a number of things that we are required to notify parents about. So we sorted them, and we said, where do they fit? So the first button we're calling, what is your student learning? So if you click on that button, you actually see some of the things, all of the things that are required in the Parent Bill of Rights, but additional items. There you have the explanation of the North Carolina Standard Course of Study, the course catalog, advanced placement opportunities, and specialty programs. Please note, we are still working on this. Some of the narratives are not there, and some of them are, but this is still a work in progress. Any questions about this part, Ms. Bradford?
Will the policies that are over here on the right, maybe hot linked, so they just click there?
Yes, everything in blue is linked, and it will also be spelled out with the name. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So then, if you click on the next one, it says, how do I know my child's progress? And there again, we have for parents, how do you go to Power School? We actually have it in different language. We also created, could you click on the flyers? This is something that we've created at New Hanover County Schools. And these are the different assessments, Mrs. Craybill, kind of sort of what you were talking about. This is an overview of all of the assessments that we give in the district and the state. And then if you go back out, Mrs. Baggy, and click on the other, you'll actually see when your child will receive this. And so parents will know, if my child's in English 2, I'm going to get this report. If my child's in third grade or second grade, I'm going to get an EOY or MOY. It gives them the information in different areas so they can see what their child would actually receive. And of course, we then go back, if you go back out to the website, you will see at the bottom of this section where it says all district and state assessments. You go to that website, and that takes you to our testing website, and it gives you even more detail of all the assessments that we provide. If you go down a little bit, Ms. Baggy, it'll show. So right there, that's everything, and with more information. Ames Web, M-Class, we have this, we put it all in this one place, but then we also provided parents of where they can go to get even more information. So then the next button is, I'm sorry. If you go back up to the second, I'm sorry, yeah. Okay, and I'm trying to read it. Oh, thank you. How can I check my child at home? I should have had my glasses. So here on the how can I help my child at home, what we've done is we've actually put, of course, front and center. And when we do the actual website, hopefully we will have the graphic of the Parent Academy there. We want to make sure parents know that is one of the first places to go to get some resources to help, how to help their child. But we also have linked how you can help your child with some of the curriculums that we're offering. And if you go down, parents' rights to know. So when you go in here, these are just some of the things that parents have. There's a right to know, the parents' rights to know has the immunization and some of the plans and some of the requirements by state. You also will find other parent rights, parent information in other areas of the website, like the way we spray asbestos. That is one thing that has to be there. We're still working on the website, but those things will be there as well. And then the last component is parent and family engagement. And this is where We are working on breaking out what is at the school level and then what is at the district level. So before Ms. Brinson comes up, I just
Will
want
you
you
put
to go.
Shaq up on that?
I'm sorry?
Will you put Shaq on that? Yeah, I see you have the CTE, but I don't see Shaq.
It's elsewhere. I don't know exactly which button we're on, but it is in there.
Could you go
Shaq
back,
is.
go back and I bet it's in the health and mental health, it's probably in the other button. Go back to the original page, Ms. Baggy, if you can. It's probably on that button.
But to that point, we can
Well, if you
add,
said it's there, then.
we can add in multiple places, and
Yeah.
we have actually done that, rather
Yeah.
than just trying to make it fit in the right one, we
Yeah.
put it in multiple, so that's a
Yeah.
good point.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And so what Mrs. Brinson is going to come up and walk you through is part of the requirement for the Parent Bill of Rights. And you'll see we have parent concerns, we have student survey concerns. If you go down a little further, you'll see requests for information. Part of this law requires our parents to be able to go and request information, and our principals have to get that information to them in 10 days, or they can get back with the parent and say, I'm still researching this. But after 20 days, then they can get to the superintendent for that information. But we have a process because the state is requiring us to track what requests we get in and how we close out those requests. And Mrs. Brinson will come up and walk you through our monitoring system. Any questions on, yes?
Yes, and maybe Dawn, Ms. Brinson's is gonna cover this for us. But in letter E, it talks about, days, but it doesn't say school days versus calendar days. And, that's under the school, health issues. And on letter F, it talks about business days for a parent request for information. So, are we gonna be clear and doing it the same way, that it's always business days, or it's always, calendar days? Or is the law that specific that some things are business days and some things are calendar days? Because that's going to be like way confusing.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think we'll have to go back and look at the law and make sure that we're aligned to that. I know it's business days for the parent request for information, I'm pretty sure. I don't know, Julie, do you know if it says the same thing for the health?
I'm under the impression it's business days for all of them, but I want to double check.
Yeah, and that's what NCSBA said. The law is not that specific. They're just copying what it said. But, we can always add in if we wanted to be that,
Right, well,
together.
unless calendar days is specified, then we operate under business days, because that's that would be the time that we have the opportunity to work on it.
Right, I mean, we wouldn't want to have to work on a weekend, to do that unless it's like, mission critical.
And before Ms. Brinson comes up, there's one thing that I want to make sure I note for all the parents who are listening. With the parent request for information, there are certain things that you go to this website to request. This is not for all requests, and so she'll highlight those things. So it's important to note there will be a number of times that the things that you need do not fall under the categories in the law. So then you will reach out to your school as you normally do.
But, Dr. Faison, as I'm hearing this, I'm thinking about a principal down here, but what you're doing is allowing the opportunity that she can put that on her website to have the specific request form, so that she's not on the hook to creating it, but she's also sharing that information with her school population. at the same time.
And exactly. And Ms. Brinson is actually going to show you how we try to take as much work off the principal as possible. They can get this, they're going to have to get this information, but behind the scenes, the collecting of the timing and the timestamp is done for them. Okay.
Committee members, at this time, I'm going to make a motion to postpone the rest of the agenda so that we can continue this conversation to the next. I'll make a motion to postpone the rest of the agenda to the next policy meeting. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of doing that, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 3-0. Thanks, Ms. Brinson.
As Dr. Faison mentioned, there are a couple of areas in which we are required to provide documentation to DPI, and those are when parents request for information on specific categories, as well as when they have a health concern. So I will go through the procedures for you. Our goal was to make it easy for principals. So when, we don't want a parent to email and then the email get lost in their inbox. And so we want to make sure that the principals see it, they understand the time, and then they'll get reminders as far as when they need to respond. So this is just like an overview. We are actually contracting with the vendor to do this for us, and they're in the process, but I kind of wanted to kind of show you a demonstration of what it'll look like. So here at the screen, we've got the information coming from the bill that talks about what the information is that they're allowed to ask. So we just basically it's a general form requesting information related to the parent involvement policy, policy addresses, Bill of Rights, guides and notifications, and authorization of healthcare minors. This part here just kind of goes through the timeline. But I've got another screen that'll kind of show that, so I won't take the time to go into there. This next screen, this is the areas in which information can be requested. So it's very specific. The law is as far as the different areas, and so these are the 10 points in which parents can ask information on that we have to actually report on. Okay. So then the next screen they'll see is we'll have the parent enter their student's ID number and confirm it, so that way we're making sure that it truly is a parent of a student. And then we'll have the parent or guardian give their name and their email address.
So a student couldn't do this on their own, or they would have to just use their parents' info?
If
Like
the
they know their
student
number.
is 18 and they can do it, then yes, the student can do this, because they can answer the same questions. But if the student's under the 18, it needs to be a parent doing it.
Right, unless they know their email.
Still
And
needs to be a
decide.
parent. If they want to get answers, it still needs to be the parent, needs to be
Okay.
involved in the process. Okay. So then the screen comes up and a place where basically the parent can ask for their question. So they're basically entering the request for information, as it relates to Part 2 of the Parental Involvement in Public Schools Act. We're kind of making sure we have that there. And then we also have down there at the bottom, if you'd like to request information about another area, please just contact your school's principal directly, so that way, let them know. We're not trying to say we can't answer anything else and provide them anything else. They just need to ask their principal, because we don't need to do the documentation on it. Okay. So then the second area is your health concerns. So again, here's just a general overview of that part of the legislation that talks about the areas. Notification of student health includes health services, screenings, changes in the student's name or pronoun, student support services training, age-appropriate instruction for kindergarten through 4th grade. This concern is about if the district or the school is not following the law. That's when that concern comes up. It's not a concern, we're not following our processes and our own procedures that we have created. That is what the concern would be about. And then that way, if a parent sees that, they're able to report that to the principal. So again, they're going to put in their student's ID number, and then the parent information, and then they have the space where they can, write their concern. Again, if they have if they want to report a concern other than a topic related to this health issue, again, contact the school directly. We're going to have that on there. Okay. So what I have next is kind of a workflow, so that way you can kind of see. So basically, initially, the parent has the request, okay? They send, the notification is sent to the principal. The parent enters it into the system, kind of like I just showed you. A notification is sent to the principal with that 10-day deadline, so they know. And then a receipt email will go to the parent, so the parent knows that it actually went. The principal then either, one, provides the information requested, provides written notice requesting an additional 10 days, or they deny or fail to respond to the request in either the 10 or 20 days. Those are your three things that the principal can do. If they deny, if they request a 10-day extension and then provide the information, then they're providing that information and then it's done. And it'll be all done through the system. If they deny or fail to respond to the request within 20 days, then the parent is able to request the same information from the superintendent with the information on the denial or failure to respond within the 10 to 20 day time frame. okay? Then the superintendent either, one, provides the information, or two, he denies or does not respond to the request within 10 business days. After that, then parents, if they don't respond or denies within 10 days, then the parent gets to appeal to the board, which for you guys, within 20 business days from the date of the request to the superintendent. And then the board can decide if they want to do an appeal, and they can have to place an appeal on the agenda for the next board meeting occurring more than 3 business days after the submission of the appeal. And then the board makes a final decision. That decision is final. There's no place else to take it. Once the board makes a decision, it's done. Okay? There will be reminders done throughout here, like within that 10-day time frame, the 20-day time frame, back to the principal to remind them of when that deadline is due. Any questions about this process?
I have a question. As far as the notification, if a parent sends in a request for information or a complaint or concern, so would the board get like a monthly script of saying, here's been the request, just knowing that we've received them, not saying, going into details, because I know they had the opportunity to appeal to us at the end, but as far as just understanding that, if that's happening, just to.
That's not part of what the law says. That would be basically the will of the board to request. But again, being careful on what we give in case it does come to you guys. Yes?
Well, we were just going to offer clarification that this particular section is for the request for information, not that there's been a policy or compliance concern with regard to physical or mental health.
So that's a different.
That's the next screen.
Okay. That's why I was asking
Yeah.
that question, yeah. You have a question, sorry.
With the whole appeal to the board, that's a closed session situation, correct?
I would imagine so.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, those would be closed session because they are specific student records information. And I wanted to also bring your attention that if a parent requests and it's more than 3 days prior to the date of the meeting, it will still have to be held in that closed session, even though it passed the time for notification. So you may be in a situation where you add a closed session after you've already posted the agenda.
Okay. So then for the parent health concerns, again, the parent will click on the link from the website. They will follow those screens. Then again, a notification is sent to the principal with a 7-day deadline this time, because it's 7 days for the health concern. If the principal is able to resolve the issue, first of all, a receipt will go to the parent that it was sent. The principal either will resolve the concern, does not respond within 7 days following the date of notification. There's basically only 2 options there. This part does not give them an extension. Okay, so if they don't respond within the 7 days, or they can't resolve the concern, then the principal will notify the superintendent of the concern and why it cannot or has not been resolved to the parent's satisfaction. So that way the superintendent is notified when something is not resolved, okay? Then after 30 days, the PSU will provide a statement of the reasons for not resolving the concern. The superintendent does have an option to be able to try and solve the concern at his level, if it can be, but after 30 days, if it can't be resolved, then the parent is able to notify the State Board of Education of the concern and request a parent concern hearing. The State Board then has the option of bringing action against the public school unit as provided in Article 26 of Chapter 1 of the General Statute for Declaratory Judgment, I can't see it, that the unit's procedures or practices violates this part. So they're able to, do this. There's 2 options, or they can fine. There's a lot of more information in this area that the State Board does as far as their processes and procedures. I didn't think that was relevant, so I didn't include it in here because it would have been like 3 more slides. So this is a little different in the process as far as the timeline. Again, there will be reminders to the principal of when stuff has to be done, as well as to the superintendent, so that way they're getting those reminders so they can resolve the concern to the satisfaction of the parent, hopefully. And this one does not go to the school board.
So the third one from the right, the one by itself, that 30-day window is to be able to procedurally, administratively go from possibly the school to superintendent. That's why it's 30 days?
It doesn't specifically say that in there, but I would imagine if it can be solved after that 7 days, before that 30 days, then it would make sense to try and resolve their concern. Because ultimately is resolving the concern. Yeah, that was what was in the law.
Yeah, and it's 2 sections of 15 days. So, yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Prince.
Okay.
Committee members, after looking at and having some thorough conversation, I appreciate the website being brought to the table. A couple of notations from just recollection of our conversation. We have some grammar errors here, just of highlighting capital B on page 2. We made a note on page 3 of this policy to potentially add the website. And I'm recapping this because I believe it's the will of the committee after hearing conversation to bring this back to policy, not hold it in committee because we want it to be live and in compliance with the law, but we want to bring it back to policy with some of these changes that we've openly addressed. So in that number 2 on page 3 of 15, we discussed either having the bulleted list of school district board or potentially having the link directly to the website that lists those out. Moving on to page 4, just keeping up with the grammar here, the C would be parental notification. That clarification was made with that. And then moving to page 7 of 15, just making sure that that continues. So that should be R, then S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z, A, A, B, B, C, C. And there will be further discussion on Ms. Bradford's suggestion of I, and that language can be included, and have further discussion with staff and committee members beforehand, as well as on page 13 of 15, Ms. Barnum, you had said to insert that link for the community services available in section G. Yes, Dr. Faison?
When we look at page 4 of 14, number 2, under parental notifications, just wanted to know if we wanted to change that language to make sure parents are not confused, that they will not receive a booklet, or because will receive a written copy. And DPI, as I stated, we do not have to provide a written copy, and most districts are doing what we are doing, the website, because you can update it, make sure it's current. So just wanted to bring that to your attention.
If you want to add language to make that change, just say the electronic version will be available here. If we want to insert a language, a link there, that's fine too. To bring that forth in January, I think that's a great idea to do that.
But similar to other policies and procedures that we have, if a parent requests it in writing, we will give it to them in writing. And then on the website, are we just going to use our translate button for the parents that English is not their first language? Or are we going to have to create a whole?
I think we always have it available.
I know Ms. Baggy has made sure that she is actually typing in the things so we can translate. We also are doing like the flyer for assessment in our top 4 languages. So that's what we're focusing on, and we're making sure parents know that they can definitely request anything. I am, as far as requesting the website in writing, or all the information in writing, we can definitely get the information in writing. We won't have a physical book, so I think that will be a time when we would actually sit with that parent and help them, and we can provide them any information that they need. We'll make sure they get exactly what they need, but we don't have a physical book to just give a parent if they requested it at this time.
A stockpile of them. Gotcha.
Dr. Faison, what are our top 4 languages?
Spanish, Vietnamese, Portugal, I think Arabic is the 4th one.
English?
Of course, English.
It's not
okay,
Chinese.
You got it right there because we have it up there. What are they? I can't see it. Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, and Vietnamese. Oh gosh, I'm good.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So continuing on with a couple more questions that I didn't hear answered in the presentation, which was awesome. That leads me to one question real quick, Dr. Faust. Are we just kind of keeping track of what this is costing us so that we can report to our state legislators about and that we didn't get enough in our budget to cover the cost of the
Got to keep it germane
thousand
to the
quadrillion
conversation
out.
because
No,
we're
I'm just
coming up on
asking.
time, so
Keep
it germane, please.
Because that's a cost. But if we look at page 10 of 15, which is 27 in the packet, D, parental permission required. I'm looking at number 4, students' participation in high-impact or high-risk sports or extracurricular activities such as football or mountain climbing. I was just wondering, do we have to include mountain climbing because that probably is not an authorized school sport?
Don't we have somebody that just hiked Everest?
So that was not a new addition in policy, but we did.
How did I miss that? Okay.
Right? Yeah, it's not one of the offerings. But we did include on the website, there's a section, I know we looked at mainly the achievement guide, but there's a section in there which stipulates, like I mentioned, these are the things you can opt out of, these are the things that you would opt into, and our athletic program is in there because it requires written parental consent, just the same as school mental health.
Right, and that's for every sport, not just the high, that's what I thought.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. So if we can look real quick at number 7, participation in a mental health assessment or mental health services under circumstances by federal law. Does that include where we have, like if we have an emergency on our campus and we have to do a threat assessment of a student's mental capacity, like maybe they're going to cause them harm to themselves or others. Is that included in that, or is that included someplace else?
No, that we utilize the support and collaboration of parents in that, but that falls under emergency healthcare when there's any kind of physical or endangerment of life. And when a threat assessment has to be completed to determine the safety for that child, that is one of those emergency situations that we're able to.
We are able to still do that.
Perform.
Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure that we didn't do that. And then can we possibly, before the next meeting, can we go through this policy and change or insert calendar days every place we're talking about it, so that we're not, if it's silent on calendar versus, I'm sorry, not calendar days, that was wrong, business days. So if we could include that where we're allowed, then and get that all cleaned up too, then I think that would be.
You mean search and replace?
Whatever,
I think
to
that
look and
would
make
be-
sure that if we're talking about you have so many days to do anything, that we say business days, so that everyone is clear and there's no place that we have one versus the other unless required by law.
So in addition to those changes, we can go back through and certainly put in business days calendars. Any other discussion for the betterment of the committee before we adjourn?
Ms. Farnham had some.
With regard to days, I would urge that we get legal advisement on making sure that if we are choosing to use business days, that complies with all areas. The only ones that would concern me would be like hearings before the board. If a concern is not resolved 30 days after the parent initially submitted the concern. I don't know if we want that to be 30 calendar or 30 business, because 30 business is pretty far out.
And Mr. Vogel, maybe that's something that you can look over and be prepared to share with us prior to coming into the January meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate Ms. Varnum's comment. I was about to jump in and say that I would recommend that I provide some legal advice on that separately, on whether to change regular days to business days when the law says just days. Thank you.
And committee members, with that, we have already agreed to postpone the rest of the agenda to the next meeting, which is in January. So I will take a motion to adjourn. So, okay, so moved. And so I hear a second. Any discussion of that? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.